Welcome to Lair the Alchemist and another edition of Sabbath Sunday. This is where we get together on Sundays to discuss all things Black Sabbath. And joining me and Darren this week is Tony Dio. Tony, you've been here on a Sabbath Sunday before, right?
Yeah,
Yep,
sure have.
we did it. So he's been here on Sabbath Sunday. He was here on Metal Jeopardy. And for today's episode, we are going to be discussing Bill Ward's first solo album, Ward 1 Along the Way. This album was released on January 10th, 1990 on Capitol and Chameleon Records. It was produced by Peter R. Kelsey, and it features a lot of guest musicians on this album. From the Sabbath universe, we have Zakk Wylde, Bob Daisley, Darren's favorite Sabbath bass player, Gordon Copley, and of course, Ozzy makes two vocal appearances on two songs. Also of note, Jack Bruce, formerly of Cream, he sings two songs and plays bass on the record also. There are actually two different covers for this album. I'll try to show them here. Actually, I have the CD. I forgot to bring it out with me, but I'll put the two covers here, insert them into the video. The first cover was a guy, what would you call that? A one-man band picture, right? Okay. Oh wow, you have it on vinyl. Nice, nice. And the other second cover is just sort of a black background with Bill in it. So, okay, guys, Tony, thanks for joining us here again at the Lair and for Sabbath Sunday. So, give us your opinion on this record, and what are some of your favorite songs on this album?
I think you've got to mention Eric Singer drums on this a lot as well.
Yeah, I forgot to mention Eric.
He was part of the Sabbath, world as well.
Yeah, yeah, you're right.
Marco Mendoza's on it. He was in like Blue Murder and a whole bunch of bands, Dead Daisies and stuff over the last few years. And Lanny Cordola is playing guitar on some tracks. He was from Jafria and House of Lords.
Yeah,
and some ones. He does some good stuff. I would say I love the two Ozzy songs, of course, Bombers and Jack's Land. They're both really cool songs. I thought Jack's Land is the best out of the two. And speaking of Lanny, he does a really cool solo on that one. And Bob Daisley's involved with that one as well. I thought that Snakes and Ladders is a cool song that Bill sings. It's just got a really unique arrangement to that one. And the second song that Jack Bruce sang on their Tall Stories, that's a really cool song as well. Jack's got such a unique voice, and it works so well with what they wrote for the song. I think Sweet, I like that one as well. That's a real fast-paced number. That song, that's a really cool one. I think one of the oddest songs on there is that was Pink Clouds and Island.
Yeah,
it's got Zakk Wylde on guitar, but he's almost unrecognizable if you tell someone that Zakk is on it, because there's no sign of a pinch harmonic anywhere there on that song.
How did they get that?
It's a whacked out song. This is a very, very proggy album. I mean, it's got more in comparison with Pink Floyd or than it does Black Sabbath, really, as far as the arrangements of the songs and so forth go. But yeah, I mean, it's a cool record for what it is. And I remember I originally, first time I bought it on cassette because I heard that Ozzy sang a couple songs on it, and I've been able to find the CD and the record over the years. I think that black cover, they said there was some pressings of it with the black cover,
yeah,
but Chameleon, I think, went out of business pretty fast. I mean, there was a few bands, I remember that label came and went really fast. I think they did it, if I'm not mistaken, they did Gary Moore's big record that would still got the blues on for you, I believe. I know they did the one with the Ozzy sang on, what's it, After the War. They did that album, but that seemed like I don't remember that label being around very long at all.
Yeah. What were you when you first heard it? Was this what you were expecting from?
No, not at all. I mean, I put it in thinking it's going to be something heavy and doomy, and it definitely wasn't. And maybe at the time, I don't think it really grabbed me as much as it did later on when I listened to it, years later. I remember, so that came out in 1990. In 1997, I went to the Foundation's forum that they used to do out in Anaheim, California every year, or what it was at Burbank. That's where it was. And they had that year, they had all the bands were showcasing in different clubs. So it wasn't all there at the hotel convention center or whatever. So you had to take a shuttle down to the Sunset Strip, and you had they had listings of in the little book telling you who was playing where. And one of the shows I went to one night was at the Palace in Hollywood, and Bill Ward performed. It was called Bill Ward and Friends. And I just found out recently that's on YouTube. The whole audio is on YouTube from that. But Bruce Dickinson got up, did some songs. He did Sabbath, Bloody Sabbath. And I remember like Tracy Guns got up and played something. But Bill played with his band. And from what I understand, it was the band that he had with Keith Lynch on guitar and so forth from the solo 1990 album. And he was promoting the When the Bow Breaks album was going to be coming out soon. And honestly, I've never heard that record. But he performed that night, and he did a few songs from the album that night, from the 1990 album. They did some Sabbath stuff, of course, with other people, but he did It's All Right in the set. That was pretty cool.
Wow, that's a cool
So that was neat to see,
Yeah, the people have been posting that. I just, right before I got on with you guys, I just saw somebody posted part 1 from that on YouTube, and the part 2 just showed up with Bruce in it. I think there's been bits and pieces of that have been on YouTube, but I think the complete show, I don't know, maybe it's just surfaced now. Somebody just sent it to me.
Yeah, that was a weird night because if I remember correctly, there were some other bands on the bill, and one of the bands I believe that played that night was Green Jelly, and this was 4 to 5 years after they had done the Three Little Pigs thing. But I ran into Doc McGee and Gene Simmons there, and they came because Doc was looking into managing Green Jelly. That's why they were hanging out. But then, like I said, the Bill Ward set was the headline of the night, if I remember right.
Wow.
But it was cool because everybody was just hanging out. Like I said, Bruce Dickinson showed up and got up saying, and it was really cool.
Neat. That's a great story. All right, Darren, what are your thoughts on the album?
I didn't know that the album was coming out until I saw the video for Bombers Can Open Bomb Bays. I think it was either, I guess it was on Headbangers Ball or some video segment on MTV. And that's how I found out about the album. I liked the song. It was a little strange. I mean, I didn't really know how to take it. I couldn't really process it at the time. I just kind of watched it. I liked the melody, but really couldn't wrap my head around it. But I was curious. So I guess a few days later, I went on the hunt looking for it, and I can only find it on cassette. I still have the cassette, but it's like buried with all my cassettes in the closet. It's going to dig it out so I can hold it up. It wasn't worth the effort, because we all know what it looks like, because Tony's got it right behind him there. But anyway, so I got it and I listened to it, and I wouldn't say that I didn't like it. I just really couldn't wrap my head around it. I came back to it a couple times, and I like Bombers Can Open Bomb Bays. I like Jack's, the 2 songs that Ozzy sang on. But overall, it seemed like it was just kind of hard to really digest for me. Sometime later, I would always kind of like check back in with it and see where I was. And it took, I think, about 3 visits for me to finally kind of like understand what was going on. And Tony, you said it's proggy, and it is. There are some elements of hard rock. It's kind of all over the place. And that's one of the things that made it hard for me to really digest, was trying to figure out what kind of music it was. Because at the time, 1990, I mean, I was pretty focused on genres and styles, and if things were just a little bit off the beaten path, it would take me longer. Not to say that I wouldn't be receptive to it, but it would take me a little longer to get into it. And of course, with Bill Ward, like you said, Tony, expected something that was going to be a little harder, a little heavier, obviously something that was more in a Sabbath vein, which it isn't. But then again, it kind of is, because when you look at songs like Swinging the Chain and It's All Right, which are the songs that Bill contributed to Sabbath, this is kind of that element of Bill over the course of 12 songs and different styles and different expressions. And I think this is pretty much an extension of Bill's personality. So you got a little bit of prog, you get a little bit of hard rock, you get some heavy stuff. It's definitely emotional. Lyrically, it's sort of confessional. You can hear in the narrative that he's talking a lot about love and his attitude toward people and things. It seems like there's a bit of a narrative of an emotional struggle, which I think has kind of been Bill's backstory with his dependency on drugs and alcohol and stuff. And so this is a really sincere album from the lyrical standpoint, from the musical standpoint. It seems like it's not inhibited to try different things. And that's really cool. And I think it lands better now than it did then, when I think things had to be compartmentalized. They had to be very direct. And there was a lot going on at that time musically, that there was trends coming up, there was trends going away. And this Bill Ward album just kind of came out. It was just sort of like hanging there, like, what do we do with this? And that's sort of where I was. What do I do with this? So it took me a while to get into it, but once I did, man, I really embraced it and I really like it. And I've been listening to it a lot within the last few days. And so the songs that I think I like the best, it's hard to really narrow it down because each song is unique. There's a good hook, there's a good melody. I don't like the production. It's very 80s, like in a bad way. And that kind of ruins it a little bit for me. And that's unfortunate, but the strength of the songs comes through. And I really like Pink Clouds on an Island. And it's funny because it's really very Pink Floyd, but in Pink Floyd in the sense of like the final cut or something later in the Pink Floyd discography, like after Pink Floyd sort of fell apart, post-Wall. And it even has Pink in the title. So that's really cool. I like that song. It has a very ethereal vibe. It's kind of psychedelic. I like Bombers Can Open Bombay. I still like that. I like the intro to that, how it just kind of like builds up into this cinematic soundscape. And there's like some voices, there's some like radio broadcasts and some speeches and things going on that you don't really know what that pertains to, but it does build into the atmosphere. And then it kicks into the song Bombers Can Open Bombays. And I like the lyrics. It's hard to really pinpoint exactly what he's talking about, but the general theme is about, human compassion. That kind of seems to be an extension of the Bill Ward personality. So right there, it's landing on something that I think I am happy to hear, that the image that I have of Bill Ward as this hippie, this misguided, peaceful, sort of tormented guy is sort of manifested within these songs. I like of the two Ozzy songs, I like Jack's Land the best. It has a better hook for me. I like the progression of the song. I like the lyrics. It's kind of neck and neck with Bombers Can Open Bombay, but of the two, I think I prefer Jack's Land. Snakes and Ladders is pretty cool. It's a little heavier. One thing I don't appreciate too much, I don't like Ruth Phillips' vocals. There's something just off-putting. It's like on the higher end. It's kind of an annoying voice, and I wish Bill would have done more singing on the album. I like Bill's voice. It was very, very earthy. It's very natural. And when his lyrics, him singing the lyrics, I think works better for me. So I wish Bill did more singing on the album. But like I said, I mean, it's an eclectic record. It all seems to stand as an extension of Bill's personality, and it's sort of a confessional thing. It's interesting that he didn't go on to do something right away, because it seems like things were sort of building up. He had a good list of guest musicians. This would have been a good starting point for him to continue on his solo career, but he didn't. And what was the second album you mentioned, When the Bow
When
Breaks?
the Bow Breaks, yeah.
I bought that, and I'm still doing the every so often periodical visitation of that, but I haven't gotten to the point where I can really digest that. So maybe at some point we'll have a discussion about that. But that's kind of where I am with it. I like it. I've kind of grown into it. The only thing that kind of kills it for me is the production's pretty dated, and that's the only unfortunate thing about it. But I think the songs were ambitious enough and forward thinking enough where the songs are definitely not grounded in the late 80s, early 90s. I think that they stand up in a contemporary way now as much as they did probably in 1990.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, for me, I first heard it when my girlfriend at the time, who's now my wife, had a metal show on our college radio station. And one of the other metal DJs came to me and said, "Oh, you're a Black Sabbath fan. Bill Ward just came out with a record. You want me to tape it for you?" And I was like, yeah, sure. So he gave me a cassette copy of it. And I remember looking at the album cover and thinking, is that Bill? Like, I didn't know, because this is 1990. At this point, Bill had been out of the public eye since Born Again, which was what, 83?
83, yeah.
Yeah, 83. So I remember thinking, is that Bill? Like, and I thought that the cover was really kind of strange. And Tony, like you, and the same with you, Darren, I was expecting something heavy, something doomy. I was also expecting a lot of drumming on it. Like, in my mind, I was thinking, Bill's like this sort of jazz influenced guy. So maybe we'll get like some jazzy, bluesy type stuff where Bill's like, soloing and doing all kinds of stuff. Yeah. And when I listened to it, I was shocked on a bunch of different levels. And you guys mentioned like the songs. I just couldn't. At the time, I couldn't get into it. It wasn't heavy enough for me. There wasn't enough guitar. It was very strange. The songs moved around in different directions, although there was some distorted guitar here and there. Tony, you mentioned Zach in that one song. I mean, is he really there? I mean, you can't tell at all that Zach's in this. And I don't remember, Tony, does the record have the liner notes of like who sang on what? Mm-hmm. Okay, because I have a memory of also looking at the record and going, Bill doesn't even play drums on all the songs.
No. Eric Singer does like 4 or 5 songs.
Yeah, and I was just so like, couldn't understand that. I was like, all right, so somebody else is playing drums. He doesn't even sing on all the songs. That confused me. Yeah. And I gave it a couple listens, and like you guys, I basically just put it away. And I wouldn't say it was until probably 95, 90, 96, 97. It was right around When the Bow Breaks comes out that I started listening to Ward 1 again. And I started to appreciate it for what it was. I think at that point, in 1990, I needed my music to have riffs and guitars in it. And if I didn't hear riffs and guitars, it was hard for me to wrap my head around things, which was strange because I was really into Pink Floyd. And all you guys have mentioned Pink Floyd, and I agree with that. And I'll take it one step further. It really reminds me of a Roger Waters solo record.
Yeah.
Pros and cons of hitchhiking,
radio
that kind of stuff. It's like there's a lot of sound effect, spoken things, sound effects. The songs sort of move. It's not really a concept album, but it's like you mentioned, Darren. It's almost a little, it's Bill sort of talking about his life in some ways, his his demons, his struggles, like you mentioned, love and all the things that come with that. And in a lot of ways, when I did revisit it later and I did start to get into it and appreciate it more, and maybe it was because by the time the late 90s rolled around, I was on the internet, I was reading a lot more about Bill and knew a lot more about the backstory of Bill Ward's life and his struggles and everything. And I was able to sort of understand this record a little bit more. And I was also, I just think, at a different place in my life. I didn't need everything to have blasting guitars and stuff like that. And I was able to sort of clear my head and say, all right, this doesn't have anything to do with Black Sabbath. This is Bill. This is what happens when you have a really big band and any member of that band goes off and does a solo thing. Darren, you and I were talking off camera not long ago about GZR, Geezer's project. And I had in my mind that it was going to be, oh, Geezer's the, hippie. He's going to write, it's going to be like Spiral Architects and songs like that with acoustic guitars and orchestrated Spiral Architect and, stuff like that. And it was, of course, something completely different. So sometimes when you're fans of these bands, it can be a little shocking when you hear like their solo projects and you're like, whoa, okay, this is, not what I expected from this person. But when I did return to it, it really grew on me. Getting ready for this episode, I listened to it a bunch of times. And actually, I admit that the production's a little dated, but for me, I don't mind it. It doesn't sound to me like some sort of reverbed out Whitesnake thing or Def Leppard with a triggered snare, like that kind of dated type of sound. I mean, it does date itself, yeah, kind of to the 80s, but to me, it sounds like they sunk a lot of money into this, which is very interesting. And all these guest musicians, say something to that. He obviously spent a lot of time with this. I think that the record label must have been really behind him. He had a video for it, looked like a fairly well budgeted video for the Ozzy one, Bombers Can Open Bomb Bass. Unfortunately, the album never seemed to click or take off. I don't remember reading really any press about it or seeing any interviews with him or really hearing much about it. It just seemed to come and go and nobody really knew anything about it. But, looking back on it now, like I said, I appreciate it a lot more. There's a lot of stuff going on. There's a lot of instruments. And you hear this later with When the Bow Breaks, his next album is very stripped down, very acoustic. The last one he did, Accountable Beasts, is more layered and there's a lot of different things going on. And what I find interesting about it is it made me realize that maybe Bill is kind of was the wild card in Black Sabbath when it came to the songwriting, because you hear some of this unconventional Black Sabbath song structures here. There's very little, if any, verse, chorus, guitar solo, chorus out type of song structures in here. It's the structures are unique, the way the songs move, there's different melodies that come in and out. And that's kind of a Black Sabbath thing too. Black Sabbath wasn't really a verse, chorus type of band. And it makes me think that, maybe Bill had a little bit more input in the sound of Black Sabbath than, maybe we realize, and I think it sort of comes through. And Darren, you mentioned Swinging the Chain and It's All Right. And I agree with you that those are little snippets of Bill's personality in Black Sabbath. But this for me kind of shows that Bill had this really artistic side, and that, I think he might have been a little bit of the secret mystery sauce in the Black Sabbath sound. When you think of Black Sabbath, you think of Iommi's riffs, Ozzy's vocals or Dio's vocals and stuff like that. But, maybe Bill had more to contribute to the original Sabbath sound than we realized. So, but my favorites are, I like the first and the last songs, Shooting Gallery and Along the Way, because I think they bookend the album really nicely. Sort of sets it up like an intro and an outro type of thing. And the way at the end, he sort of hums and sings that melody that you've heard earlier in the album, I think is really cool. And that ending where it just goes, good night, That's very Roger Waters, very Pink
Yeah.
Floyd. I like the Ozzy songs, Bombers Can Open Bombays and Jack's Land. When you hear Ozzy in these songs, it really makes you think like, wow, gee, imagine if like Bill was in Ozzy's solo band with like Randy or Jake or something. Like his influence on the songwriting, you can sort of hear Ozzy, because of his voice, automatically brings a little bit of a heavier, darker element to those songs. But it just, gets my wheels turning like, man, if they could have worked together around that era of Ozzy. Pink Clouds in an Island. That was a song that when I first heard this, I was just like, what is this? I couldn't, when he keeps repeating that line, and it really doesn't matter. I was like, early on, I was like, no, this is too much for me. But then it's turned into one of my favorites because it's again, has this sort of Pink Floyd atmospheric quality to it. And I also like Music for a Raw Nerve because it has that sort of ominous, just this repeating figure. There's a piano note like dong. To me, that's the artistic side of Bill. You hear this on his other records, these simple little things like one piano note or a sound or just one vocal harmony that only comes in one spot in the song. And that makes me think that, Bill was maybe this guy that he almost like could have been a producer or something. He was able to hear these things and be like, you know what that needs right there? It needs somebody hitting one note on a piano, or it needs whatever, a harmony, or just this sound right there. He seems to be able to orchestrate and capture moods very well in his songs. So there's my favorites. There's my thoughts on this. So
You know what this kind of reminds me of? It reminds me of something, and it's hard for me to articulate this because it's more of a feeling that I get when I listen to it. And even when I look at the cover, it reminds me of Terry Gilliam. And Terry Gilliam, if I'm not mistaken, was a writer for Monty Python and was an occasional actor in the show. And of course, Monty Python was somewhat satirical. It was madcap. It was, it is what it is, British humor. And but Terry Gilliam went on and he did some more thought-provoking. Of course, there was an element of Monty Python involved with Terry Gilliam stuff, but there was kind of like a serious, thought-provoking edge to it. And I think it just reminds me a lot of Bill Ward taking on this. On the surface, it seems like when you look at the cover and you see Bill dressed up and he's like a one-man band, it almost seems kind of goofy, kind of funny. And then there's all these little characters around him, which you could probably interpret as different aspects of Bill's personality that are involved in it. So you could look at the album cover as a concept or as sort of an underlying theme of what's going on with the music itself, but it always seemed to have like this Terry Gilliam British Monty Python related type of thing where on the surface there's some things that you can get right away. You can hear the riffs, you can hear the melodies, you can hear the voices, you can hear the various guest musicians and the things that are the features of this album. But underneath the surface there's a message, as personal as it may be. The message could just be, I'm Bill Ward, this is who I am. If you're a Black Sabbath fan, or if you're familiar with me from my time in Black Sabbath and you're curious about who I am, I'm going to tell you, but I'm going to do it in a creative way. That's the vibe that I get from this album. And I think that maybe the reason there wasn't an immediate follow-up or follow-up to this album within a short amount of time was probably because most of what he wanted to get out, he got out in this album. And then of course life goes on and there's more things, there's more living to be had. And then once he did, then started to compile enough material for another album. That was when the bow breaks. So yeah, the interesting thing about this is that it definitely, and I said this before, and I'll say it again, it definitely seems to come from a very sincere, honest place from Bill Ward. And something I don't think I could really appreciate at the time that it came out or even really cared too much about. I just wanted to be entertained. Like you said, John, you're looking for riffs, you're looking for something that had more of a, immediate captivating element. And this is more cerebral.
Yeah.
And it's something you kind of grow into. And I really do appreciate the album now. And I have probably for the past year or so, because we talked about it. And I think I mentioned it and you're like, are you serious? You hate that album? I'm like, well, no, I used to, but now I like it a lot. And that's kind of where I am. And that's exactly where I was when we were talking about it. I'm like, oh, wow, did I say that? I probably did. Well, now I love it. And I really do love it. It's really cool. It's really entertaining to listen to. And there's just a lot of things. And I like to kick back and listen to something that kind of takes you on a journey. And this album definitely does from start to finish. Yeah.
Tony, any final thoughts on the album?
We spoke earlier about the alternate covers. I remember going to like a record show, record fair, convention or whatever years back. It was probably in mid 2000, maybe 2005 or something like that. I can't remember for sure, but when you're looking through CDs and I saw Bill Ward's CD, it was called Living Naked. And it was the exact same album, different cover art, different title, but had the same song. So some label reissued it as Living Naked, which is one of the songs from the record anyway. But I've never seen it again. It's one of those things I kind of it was such an oddity now. I think back and go, man, I should have just grabbed that, because I love to find alternate versions of records and stuff anyway. But I remember seeing that when it came out like that. And like I said, it was probably, it was probably mid 2000s when I saw it.
I wonder if it was a bootleg.
Yeah, it might have been a bootleg.
Possibly. Because this album, in doing research for this, I went to Bill Ward's official site, and he says on there that he tried to reissue this, couldn't, and it won't be. So I think that this has been out of print for ages, and I don't think the album sold particularly well. I don't think it made any kind of, if you ask most people, it's sort of this, an album that hardcore fans know about it, but there's a lot of people that don't know that this album even exists. So it could have been some sort of
could have been a bootleg, unofficial some sort. But it's like you said, that when this record came out, really we hadn't heard anything from Bill Ward since the Live Aid reunion. Really was the last time we had seen him, and he made a quick appearance in Trouble's Run to the Light video. If you remember that, it's about 87 or so. He's in the video, but you didn't hear anything. I don't recall seeing any interviews or anything. And I was buying Kerrangs and stuff like that back then as well. You just didn't hear anything. And then this pops up. And of course, after this, a couple of years later, they did the Sabbath reunion at the end of the Ozzy tour. And then you start seeing Bill being interviewed in Ozzy documentaries and stuff like that. You start seeing him come out a little more, but really he was very mysterious, there for a while before this record came out. So it's like he just kind of came out of the blue with this solo record.
Yeah.
I heard him interviewed on Eddie Trunk a couple of years ago, and he was talking a lot about basically his overall state of mind. I don't know if it was because of the alcohol dependency or things that happened in relationships that he had, but he was just overall a very fragile state of mind. So I think he kind of tried to stay out of the public and
public eye, probably
focus on some of the issues he was having personally, and that could be one of the reasons why he never really got back into Sabbath. He did that reunion run for a number of years.
Yeah.
But I don't know. He was always like wild card. Even with going back to Heaven and Hell, there he was. He's the album Heaven and Hell. He came back into the band. He was on tour for a little while, but couldn't hang, and he leaves, and then
he's back for Born Again.
He recorded the album, and then it wasn't
he shows up on the Headless Cross tour where he did played a couple dates, or
no, I
think it was later to Cross
Purposes.
Yeah,
that was like 94 or something too.
Yeah. So he would
that was after
completely disappear from the public eye but he would just every now and then sort of pop up. And
I think that's cool. I think that makes me like him even more. He's like that weird guy that lives in the closet in that movie, Real Genius, Laszlo.
yeah,
And you see pictures of Bill. He's got like, even on the what was it, the thing at JFK Live Aid, where he's got like he's got sweatpants, he's got red chucks, he's got long hair, he's overweight, like belly's hanging out. He just looks like somebody rolled him out of bed.
yeah.
And I think that's so cool because
He does have this like
that period of time, everybody was so fat. You know, Ozzy looks like, you know, he's just got glitter in his hair. Of course, he's overweight too. But he's got eyeliner and he's got this, you know, elaborate, what was it, like sequin?
The Golden Girls look.
Yeah, he looked like B. Arthur in the Golden Girls.
and Bill is this guy that's living in a cabin somewhere in the woods with no
He was
electricity.
living in his
running
car.
Bill looked like 70s Bill at Live Aid.
Yeah.
He looked like he looked
Yeah.
the last time you saw him. Basically.
Exactly. And he looked cool when he was playing.
Yeah,
drums.
he
Like,
did.
there, and his face was like, he was like into it. Yeah, that's when I really, you know, because Tony was there and he's got the shades on. And he's just kind of looking around, smiling, like, yeah, I could do this in my sleep. Ozzy, of course, he's just, you know, being Ozzy. But Geezer and Bill especially, they just look really cool. They look like that's Black Sabbath right there. Those two guys. And
Geezer had the red Iron Bird bass that was
Yeah,
I never play ever again.
yeah, that's funny.
but,
All right, well, there you go. Bill Ward's Ward 1 Along the Way. If you're out there and you haven't heard this record, I encourage you to seek it out. It is out of print, and it's not on any of the streaming services, but you can listen to it on YouTube. There's people that have uploaded it on there. So if you haven't heard it, definitely check it out. Approach it with an open mind. Realize that it's a much different thing than anything from the world of Black Sabbath, but it's probably not an album that you're gonna get just on a casual first listen. It's something you gotta dig into. You gotta put headphones on and give it a listen. So let us know out there if you've heard this record or what you think of it. Let us know what you think of Bill Ward's solo stuff in general. Let us know in the comments down below, and we'll see you at the end. Thanks to Tony for joining us here on Sabbath Sunday. I'm sure he'll be back, and we'll see you all at the next Sabbath Sunday.